Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today I want to talk a little bit about the new Mean Girls musical movie. I haven't scripted this video, I'm just going to talk. I just had some thoughts that I wanted to share and I couldn't be bothered sitting down trying to put it into something proper, so we're just going to have a little chat, just going to have a little discussion about my thoughts now that the movie is out. So, first of all, I have to make two things perfectly clear. One, I've never actually seen the Mean Girls stage show, obviously. It only ever ran on Broadway. It ran for 2 years between 2018 and 2020, shut down because of the pandemic and never reopened. I've never been to New York, so I've never gone to Broadway. I couldn't see it. I've only ever watched a bootleg of it and listened to the original cast recording. And two, I still haven't actually seen the Mean Girls movie yet. Where I live does not have a cinema, and even if it did, cinema tickets are so pricey these days. I am going to watch it whenever it comes to... when I have the ability to watch it on my home television. But I have listened to the soundtrack, and that's more what I want to talk about today. I'm more here to talk about the music than the actual quality of the movie itself. I can't speak on the quality of the movie, so if you are here to hear a review of the movie, I cannot provide you such a thing. But I can provide you a review of the soundtrack, and considering the film is supposedly a musical, then the music is quite important, and that's really what I want to discuss today. So before we go into it, we obviously have to address the elephant in the room, which is obviously the reputation that this movie has garnered since it was its first trailer came out. Now for me, the first trailer I saw for the Mean Girls musical movie, Mean Girls 2024, I suppose we're going to have to call it, because calling it Mean Girls musical movie is so lengthy and has so many M's. Mean Girls 2024 was the trailer that came out before the Eras tour in the cinema, because I did go to the cinema for that. And in it did have a little bit of Regina's section of Meet the Plastics. It came on and it was like, "My name is Regina George," and I was like, oh right, yeah, this is the new like adaptation they're doing of the Mean Girls musical. Because I had heard on the grapevine, I follow a lot of like theatre YouTubers, so I tend to hear about these things. I love musical theatre. Should probably do a disclaimer of that, although I'm sure if you've been on my channel before, you'll know I've done a lot of videos about musicals. And I know a lot about musicals, even musicals that I don't like. I have a ridiculous knowledge of Diana the musical, despite the fact that I think it's one of the worst musicals ever made. I have a lot of knowledge about musicals. I love musical theatre. So I was aware that this was in the pipeline, although I didn't realise that it already, it was ready to come out until I saw that trailer. And I thought nothing of it. I was genuinely kind of cautiously optimistic about it. Obviously they'd cast Renee Rapp as Regina George, and not only do I really like Renee Rapp as a singer in her own right, like Poison Poison is a bop, but also she was Regina George on Broadway. She played that role for a few months. I think she joined in late 2019, and then obviously it shut down for the pandemic in March of 2020, and that was unfortunately the end of her run. But she was Regina George on Broadway, and one of the things we always say about movie musicals is that so often they eschew casting people who have played the role on stage and who genuinely can do the material with people who are well known and will get people into the cinema. I mean, we only have to look at the state of Les Mis, right? The most talented, right? Like Anne Hathaway is fantastic, right? But the person who does the best job in Les Mis is Samantha Barks. And the reason that Samantha Barks does so well in Les Mis is because that was already her role. She was Eponine on the West End. So she knew that role inside out. On the other hand, you've got Hugh Jackman, and I'm not saying Hugh Jackman can't sing, but he can't sing Valjean. It's really bad. Bring Him Home is my favourite song in Les Mis, and I fast forward through it if I'm watching the movie because it hurts my ears. So I was really happy that they had cast an actual Broadway performer who played the role in the movie. And on top of that, we also had Ali Carvalho, who is the girl from Moana, who I adore. So that's awesome. And I looked at it and I was like, you know, I think this could be really good. I don't know a lot of the other people. I don't know Anjali Rice. I don't know is it Raquel Spivey? There's a lot of people in the cast that I don't know, but all the people that I did know, and obviously they were bringing back Tina Fey and I forget his name, but the man who played the principal, Tim Meadows, is that right? Tim Meadows. So I was like, you know what? Cautiously optimistic for this. Now, admittedly, and I do have to say this, I have to make a point, I don't like the Mean Girls musical very much. I think the music in Mean Girls on Broadway is quite basic, quite generic. There's quite a few songs that feel like they don't need to be there. I think the whole musical is kind of uninteresting, and it's a shame in a lot of ways because Mean Girls was such a powerhouse of a movie, right? Like, it came out in 2004. I was born in 1995, so I was just a little bit under the age demographic for this movie, but I still grew up with it. I saw it and I thought it was hilarious, and as I got older and went into high school and rewatched it when I was like kind of 14, 15, and I was in that high school environment, I thought this movie was incredible. It was so funny, and I still to this day love Mean Girls. I am an unashamed basic Mean Girls bitch. I was one of those people who said on Wednesdays we were pink every year, and back of my head when it's like October, the 3rd of October, I'm like, it's October 3rd. I'm also a Full Metal Alchemist fan, so I have to share both memes. But like, I am a Mean Girl quoting basic bitch. It has to be said. So I think it's a shame that the musical that came out didn't really do a lot of justice to how good the movie was, because the musical is kind of mediocre and feels kind of like a cash grab, and kind of like they were trying to recreate what Heathers had done a couple of years before. And Heathers is a really good musical, and they were trying to cash in on the same demographic. And don't get me wrong, there are people who love this musical. It appeals to some people, especially if you're someone who prefers that kind of more pop musical. Mean Girls tends to have a similar kind of audience as, like, say, Six, right? And I love Six, but the songs in Six are obviously very pop, and Mean Girls is very pop, so they tend to have a similar kind of demographic. Heathers is quite pop as well. It's a bit rockier, but it's also kind of the same genre. And so they tend to kind of, it appeals to a younger demographic who like musicals, but maybe not quite your Andrew Lloyd Webbers or your Les Mis or your Sondheim, that are more kind of traditional in style. But ultimately, Mean Girls has an audience. It's not me, but it has an audience. But as a result, I was cautiously optimistic for the movie. It looked like it could be fairly good. The music would still be the music, and I would still not enjoy it very much, but I still thought it could be a good, a fun little movie. But, of course, then the second trailer came out, and we all had some questions. So the second trailer released, and it had no music from the show in it, and nothing in the trailer suggested it was a musical. The song that they put in the trailer, I'm pretty sure, was Getting Back by Olivia Rodrigo. And there wasn't anything that, I mean, if you knew it was a musical, you could kind of pick bits out and be like, well, it kind of looks like they're dancing there. But if you didn't know it was a musical, there was no way you were going to look at this trailer and go, oh, a musical. Because it didn't look like one. And there are a few issues with that. The first is that a lot of people saw this trailer, didn't realise it was a musical, and just assumed it was a mediocre reimagining or remake of the original movie. And this wasn't helped by the fact that the trailer itself said things like a new take by Tina Fey, not your mother's Mean Girls, but nothing to say that the new take was an adaptation of the Broadway musical, especially since the Broadway musical already exists. I have also seen people that didn't realise that the Broadway version existed. So even after being told it was a musical, they were like, well, why would it be a musical? I don't need, why would you put songs in Mean Girls? And it's like, no, this already existed. This has existed for 6 years. This is just them making a movie out of it. Like, the musical already exists. This is just an adaptation. But so many people saw that trailer, and because the trailer didn't say it was a musical and had all these things about a fresh take and not your mother's Mean Girls, they just assumed it was a remake. And if you go on the Instagram for the film and look at the comments, the majority of the comments are people saying things like, we don't want this, we don't need this, why would you remake a music? Why would you remake the movie Why would you do this? This is never going to be as good as the original, yada, yada, yada. And like, I get it. I get it. I do. I understand what it's like to see a franchise be rebooted when you think that there's no way to top the original. I had to go through it with Charmed. It was difficult, right? And I try not to talk about that because I don't want to seem like a bitter OG fan who just shits all over the remake, but I didn't see why they felt the need to make that. And so I can understand that logic. I can understand that feeling. I felt the same way about the Tomb Raider 2013 trilogy. I have so many issues with that, and it feels unnecessary and sort of derogatory to the original, a lot of what they said about why they created that. So again, I get it. I do. But I think it sums up perfectly in this one comment that I saw where someone put, what conceivable reason could anyone have to remake this movie? And someone had replied, it's a musical. And the original commenter actually came back and went, ah, fair enough. And I was like, if that doesn't sum it up, people wouldn't be so antagonistic if you'd made it clear from the start what this actually is. And so the film doesn't appeal to people who like Mean Girls. So if it doesn't appeal to people who like Mean Girls, who does it appeal to? Well, it would probably appeal to fans of the Broadway show, because like I said, it does have its fan base. But it can't really appeal to them either because the trailer doesn't tell you that that's what it is. And if you don't already know that that musical adaptation is coming, then this trailer isn't going to tell you. So it's not going to appeal to the Broadway fans because they don't know it's a musical either. Is it going to appeal to general musical fans or people who might like the idea of seeing a new musical of some description? No, because they don't know it's a musical either. So who does it appeal to? And that's really the question that I've been asking this whole time of, who is this for? Who was this musical? Who was this movie? Mean Girls 2024, Mean Girls the movie, the musical, the series. Who was this made for? And honestly, after listening to the soundtrack, I have even less understanding of who this was for. Because it doesn't feel like it's for the original fans. It doesn't feel like it's for musical theatre fans. And it doesn't even feel like it's for the Mean Girls musical, stage show, Broadway fans. Because it's not really a particularly good adaptation of that either, in my opinion. And I'm going to explain to you why. But that in itself is baffling, because if you're trying to market something, I don't know why you would intentionally market it in such a way that it appeals to no one. I watched a video about someone saying that they felt that the hatedom for this movie was unwarranted. And I agree. Like, I think that hating something before it's even come out is usually not great, because it means that you go into it with a preconceived notion that it will be bad, and then you intentionally try and make it bad. Even if it's not bad, you'll try and find ways to poke holes in it because you want it to fit the narrative that you've already created in your head, that it will be bad. But while I think that's true, I also feel like they sort of brought it upon themselves, the people who made this movie, because, or at least the producers and executives who arranged the marketing, because they deliberately made it in such a way that it was antagonistic to original fans by saying, like, this is not your mother's Mean Girls.
This is not your mother's Pink.
No, this is not your mother's Pink.
I said it's not your mother's Pink.
Tell me, not your mother's Pink.
So it's like, if you're a original fan, don't go and see this. This isn't for you. You've got your version of Mean Girls. This is not yours. This is not for you. Do not go and see this movie. And it's like, okay, like, fair enough, but maybe I love Mean Girls so much that I would want to go and see a new adaptation of it. Maybe I just love Mean Girls. So now I don't want to go and see it, but maybe I would have went to see it if you hadn't deliberately antagonized me in your marketing campaign. So that's one group out the window. Am I a musical theatre fan? Do I love musicals? Would I be interested in seeing a musical? Yes. But I don't know it's a musical, so I'm not going to go and see it. Am I a fan of Mean Girls the musical? Perhaps. Am I going to go and see it? No, because I don't know that's what this is. It looks like a regular old remake, and I want to see the musical. I want to see a movie of the musical. And that's apparently not what this is, because they haven't told me that it is. So what the person said in the video I was watching was that it probably appeals to the kind of preteen, early high school demographic who maybe just see the trailer and think that looks like a fun movie. And that's fine. But why would you limit yourself to such a small demographic when you've got such a large audience that might actually enjoy this movie if you marketed it in such a way that they would actually want to go and see it? Why would you limit yourself to like 12 to 14-year-old girls when you could appeal to such a larger audience if you just bothered to market your film? Because no one's going to go and see it. It's not like Wonka. Like, people had the same criticism of Wonka, that it was marketed without saying that it was a musical, which meant a lot of people actually did. I saw it on Twitter. A lot of people went to the cinema thinking it was a regular movie and then being confused that it was a musical. Now, both previous adaptations of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory have had songs, so I feel like it shouldn't be a surprise that Wonka sings, because Wonka has always sung. The Oompa Loompas sing. That's kind of... I feel like that's established canon by now. But, again, it's like, if you're a fan of musicals, you would probably want to go and see Wonka. And if you're not a fan of musicals, you might not want to go and see Wonka. So maybe market it in such a way that the audience that actually goes to see the film are more likely to enjoy it, rather than turning away the people that might actually like it and encouraging people who won't like it to go and see it. That just seems like the most backwards kind of marketing. So it was very, very strange that Mean Girls was marketed in such a way that so many people that probably would get a kick out of it ended up not wanting to go and see it. Unless it was deliberately marketed so badly to try and create media buzz of being like, why is this Mean Girls marketing so shit? In which case they succeeded, but I'm not sure it actually helped them gain any money. They just gained bad publicity. But to move on now to the actual movie itself. So I want to talk to you about the music because, as I say, I haven't seen the film, but I have listened to the soundtrack and I have thoughts. So the first thing that we found out about the soundtrack was when the track listing was announced online before the movie came out, and people who have knowledge of the musical and are possibly fans of the musical were instantly surprised by how short the track list is. So the original Broadway cast recording for Mean Girls is 21 songs long and runs for 1 hour and 7 minutes if you look at it collated on Spotify. The soundtrack for Mean Girls 2024 is 13 songs long and runs for a collective total of 34 minutes. So it's half the length of the soundtrack from the show. On top of that, one of those 13 songs is a brand new song by Renee Rapp and Megan Thee Stallion and isn't from the show, so we're down to 12 songs. And another one of those songs is actually a replacement song, so instead of being the song from the musical, it's a new song written by Renee Rapp for Katie's character to replace a song that was in the musical. So we're now down to 11 songs from the actual show. So we're missing 10 entire songs from the original Broadway soundtrack, and it means that taking out Not My Fault actually reduces the soundtrack from 34 minutes to 31 minutes. And the Mean Girls 2024 runtime is 1 hour and 52 minutes. So you've got an almost 2 hour long film of which only half an hour is music. I'm not sure that's the best way to do a musical. And this is where I started to really get concerned, was that if this was supposed to in any way draw in fans of the musical, and again, the marketing didn't really do anything to achieve that, but surely the audience that you would most want to grab are the people who are already a fan of the thing. Like, you're making an adaptation of the Mean Girls musical, so your target audience, the people you really want to get in, are the fans of the Mean Girls musical, because this is what they want to see. Like, people who are musical theatre fans love when we get adaptations of musicals because musical theatre is such an inaccessible art. So many shows never leave Broadway. If we're here in the UK, we have no opportunity to see them. If you are in the UK and it goes to the West End, that's still really difficult. I'm up here in Scotland. Getting to London is not a simple thing for me. It costs a lot of money to go to a theatre. If the show never tours, you are basically forced to spend money on travel, accommodation, the tickets themselves, trying to get something to eat before you go. The whole thing becomes a really huge expenditure. And going to see one show at the theatre can actually cost more than like a full family holiday. It's very, very expensive. I apologise if you can hear rattling in the background. My washing machine is on its spin cycle. And so when we get either a movie adaptation or a pro shot, it's really exciting for musical theatre fans because we finally have a way to watch the movie that's not a bootleg, and we're going to get a proper professional recording. So fans of the musical, of Mean Girls the musical, were really excited to finally have a version of the show that they can watch. Except that they don't, because it's missing half the songs. So it's not really a full adaptation of the musical, it's almost like an abridged adaptation of the musical. And sure, shows do, when they transfer into movies, sometimes cut songs out of the runtime. A lot of musicals are over 2 hours long, some of them are nearer 3 hours. And of course, musicals have an intermission, which breaks up that, whereas if you're going to the cinema, you don't get an intermission, and so sitting for post 2 hours feels very, very long. I mean, I've seen Avatar in the cinema multiple times. I know what sitting for over 2 hours in a cinema feels like. And so we're used to sometimes songs getting cut, like Mamma Mia, the film version doesn't have Under Attack, it doesn't have The Name of the Game, but we still love the movie because it's very good. But to cut 10 songs out of your film, to replace a song with another song, oh, and on top of that, some of the songs that are actually in the show have been drastically cut down. They've had chunks of the song removed to make them even shorter than they already were. So not only have full songs been cut out, but parts of the songs that are left have also been cut. So we've got this very, very stripped back version of the musical, which almost feels like it doesn't want to be a musical either. Not only did the marketing not want this to be a musical, but it almost feels as if nobody wanted this to be a musical. As if the songs are just there as if they needed to be, as if the only way that they could get this movie out was if it had songs in it. And so they shoved in a song here and there to try and prove a point. But it means that of the 2 hour runtime, an hour and a half of that must be regular movie scenes and not songs. And if I'm going to see a musical, I want there to be a decent amount of songs in there. So yeah, I have a lot of questions about why they went the way that they did with the actual soundtrack to this musical. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. So I made some notes while I was listening to the soundtrack, and I'm just going to go through it with you and tell you what I think about the soundtrack and my concerns about the movie. Like I say, I haven't seen it yet, but I am feeling kind of concerned after hearing the soundtrack. I do have some qualms about how the movie is going to turn out when it doesn't feel like it knows exactly what it wants to be. So first up we have the song A Cautionary Tale, which is basically the introduction, like the kind of the song where Janice and Damien introduce the entire concept of the show. And it's basically the same. It is 30 seconds shorter on the movie soundtrack, but it's just the instrumental opening. And that it is kind of a thing through this movie where they've stripped back the songs to make them sound more pop than musical theatre. And Mean Girls already was quite a poppy musical, but it did still have proper orchestration like a musical, but they seem to have taken a lot of that out to try and make it sound more pop. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'll talk about it more later, but that is why Cautionary Tale is 30 seconds longer. It's because it loses what is essentially the overture at the beginning of the song. But other than that, it sounds basically the same. Ali has a gorgeous voice. Wakel also very good. They sound great. I don't really have any thoughts on that. I do have a lot of thoughts about the second song. So originally the second song in Mean Girls on Broadway is a song called It Roars. It's performed by Katie, and it's the song where at the beginning of the song her parents tell her that they're going to be moving from Kenya to the US and she's going to be attending regular high school. And the song is basically, it starts with Katie being very excited about going to high school, this new experience. She's always lived in Africa. Her only friends are animals. She's never went to regular school, and this is like a dream come true for her. But when she actually gets to the school, she discovers it's not quite what she thought it was going to be, and that she sees that the students in the hallways act like animals, and they remind her of the animals back home. And that's what it's all about. It's comparing the students to animals, and it's kind of a theme throughout the Broadway show, of this idea of Katie comparing her high school world, what she first, in the movie, the original movie, she always called it Girl World, and how Girl World is so reminiscent of the animal kingdom when you take it back to its bare bones. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of similarities between high school and wild animals. Now, personally, I don't like It Roars very much as a song. I don't think it's very good. And objectively, the song that they've replaced it with in this version it's called What Ifs, and it's written by Renee Rapp herself. I think objectively that's a better song, but objectively, I think that Lavender Haze by Taylor Swift is a better song than Dear Theodosia. However, if we got to the end of the first act of Hamilton and Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton stood up and started going, all they keep asking me is if I'm gonna be your bride, instead of singing about their children, I think we would all be very confused. So just because What Ifs is objectively a better song doesn't mean it's a better song for this particular musical. And I don't think it is. What Ifs is very generic. It has quite generic lyrics. It's just a regular pop song, and it doesn't set the scene the way that It Roars does. And on top of that, the idea of It Roars and the animals being like the students acting like animals, it comes back in Apex Predator later in the show. And so without It Roars to set that idea, we don't have the same weight in Apex Predator later on to understand the idea that Katie sees the school like wild animals. And on top of that, the idea that at the very beginning, she's kind of freaked out by the fact that the kids act like animals. But then later on, she thinks that maybe that's a good thing because it means that she can join the Apex Predator, that she understands the animal kingdom, and as long as she's with the right animal, she can actually have power over this kingdom. But we don't get that same understanding of her motives in Apex Predator without It Roars, which might explain why they have so drastically changed Apex Predator later in the show, but we will get to that. On top of all of that, as much as I don't like It Roars, I know it's really popular, and when it came out online that it wasn't going to be in the show, I saw a lot of people in the comments who were genuinely devastated to lose this song from the show. And this is the point I'm trying to make. If you're making an adaptation of the musical, it kind of stands to reason that you might want to include songs from the musical that people know and love, and not maybe take them out and replace them with other songs that people don't know and love. But for some reason, for this musical, they thought the best thing to do was take out a song that is really popular and just, replace it with something else. Which, as I say, is a good song in its own right, but it's not the song that's supposed to be in this scene. So nobody really wanted it. And speaking of songs that I can't understand why you would take out a song that's so popular, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So the next song on the show on Broadway is a song called Where Do You Belong, but it's not in the movie. It's been completely removed, so we might as well just skip on over it to the next song, which is what I really need to talk about, because this is the most baffling decision of the entire show for me. And when I realised this, that was when I truly lost all faith. This was the moment that I really did think this film was doomed. And it's the song Meet the Plastics. So Meet the Plastics is arguably, probably, almost certainly the most popular song from this show. I don't think it's the best song. I'm an Apex Predator stan. But Meet the Plastics is incredibly popular. It's a great sing-along song. People love it. And it's the song that, unsurprisingly, introduces the Plastics. Janice and Damien explain who these girls are, and each girl, Regina, Gretchen, and Karen, get their own section of the song where they sing about themselves, and each section is very different from each other. They're not similar because they're written to reflect their personalities. Regina's is kind of very slow and sultry and very boastful. Gretchen's is really fast-paced and anxiety-driven because she is constantly frazzled by this situation that she's found herself in, where she's trying to be the perfect friend for Regina, but it causes her so much stress. So hers is very frantic and very chaotic. And then Karen's is incredibly simple and almost childlike because she's supposed to be so dumb that her song is incredibly simple to go with her simple brain. No offense to Karen, that is how it's written. It's really popular. People love it. It's fun. And like, look, I do love, like, there is something very funny about, my name is Karen, my hair is shiny, something, something, my skirt is tiny, it barely covers my perky hiney. It's funny, right? And it does give a perfect setup for these characters because you learn so much about their personality just from the style of the song that they are given. So when I looked at the 2024 soundtrack and saw that Meet the Plastics was suddenly 1 minute 29 seconds long, I was so confused because I'm like, I know that's a plus 4 minute song. That's a long ass song. And I checked, it should be 4 minutes 18. So what the hell happened? Well, I clicked on it to listen, and it turns out that the only bit that they kept was Regina's own section. None of the dialogue, none of the stuff from Karen and none of the stuff from Janice and Damien, Gretchen's part and Karen's part, all of that's gone. The only part that they kept was, my name is Regina George, and I am a massive deal. The rest of it's gone. So not really Meet the Plastics, meet the one plastic that we bothered to include. And this is when I was just like, you've made an adaptation of a musical that has a fan base, and you've cut one of the most popular sections of the entire show. Who is this for? This is what I mean. Like, who is this for? Because I'm beginning to think it's not for the fans of the musical either, because if it was, you wouldn't have cut out It Roars and you wouldn't have chopped the majority of Meet the Plastics. Considering how popular those songs are with the fan base, what the hell are you doing? And I get you can still introduce the plastics in dialogue, but you're never going to get the same weight and same understanding of those characters without Gretchen and Karen's chunks of that song. I'm losing the ability to speak. But I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't get why you would... I don't get how you could put this down on paper, look at all the songs and go, what should we cut? Meet the Plastics. That's what we should cut. Nobody wants Meet the Plastics. No one cares about that song. It's not as if it's the most popular song in the show that sets up the characters, the main characters. I don't understand. I don't understand. And this is when I really, really lost all hope. Because I was like, if they've done that, I've just got no hope for the rest of the film at this point. Anyway, let's move on. Next song is Stupid with Love. It's 50 seconds shorter in the movie than it was in the musical. And they took out the first verse, although I think there may be a reason for that. So the first verse is like a joke that Katie makes about when she was a child, the first boy that she fell in love with ran away from her, and she's like, he literally ran from me, he literally ran from me, and being Kenyan, he ran fast, which is obviously a joke about the fact that a lot of like Olympic runners and like the fastest men in the world tend to be African and sometimes from Kenya itself. They come from other countries as well, like Ghana, Uganda, but that's the joke there. And I think possibly they thought that it was in poor taste, so they took it out. But other than that, the song also loses like all of Katie's awkwardness. The song is meant to be kind of awkward and how she's like, I don't know how to do relationships and crushes, so I spend my time doing maths because I can understand maths. I'm smart with maths, but I'm stupid with love is the idea of the song. But she doesn't sing it with any level of awkwardness or insecurity. She sounds really confident while singing it, which makes no sense because the song is supposed to be about how awkward she feels having a crush on a boy because she doesn't know how to process it, and any time that she's had a crush on a boy before when she was a kid, it never worked out for her. But she just sings it with this like bold confidence as if like she doesn't care. But that's not the idea of the song. The idea of the song is she's meant to feel awkward. So it just, I don't know, it just didn't sound right to me at all, and it didn't feel like it had any personality. It just felt like a girl standing singing a song in her bedroom mirror without any emotion, it didn't feel like anything. And I was just like, this is so boring. It doesn't have any of the charm that it had in the original show. And again, I don't even like these songs. So if I'm saying that like the songs in the Broadway version were better, it's not a high bar to pass. So they really, really got it wrong here. Oh god, okay. Right, now we need to talk about Apex Predator. So like I said, Apex Predator is my favourite song on the show, and I think it's the best song on the show. It's one of the only songs that I think really stands out as like a genuinely good piece of musical theatre. So Apex Predator is this like very rocky song performed by Janice and Katie. And obviously in the original Broadway cast soundtrack, it's performed by Barrett Wilbert-Weed as Janice. And Barrett Wilbert-Weed was the original Veronica and Heather. She has an incredible voice, and it literally doesn't matter what you put in front of her. You can hand her the worst material in the world and she will make it sound fantastic because she is such a good performer. And Apex Predator is so good. The whole point of this song is meant to be comparing and contrasting the two different ways that Janice and Katie currently view Regina. So Janice sees Regina as the villain. She says that she's viewed as the apex predator, but that's in a derogatory way. She looks at her and basically says like she's an animal. All she cares about is the thrill of the kill. She's out here to ruin lives. She's not a good person. Like, she is more animal than human. She's not a person, she's an animal. And animals also, like, obviously wild animals have an instinct. It's not that animals aren't capable of empathy and love, they are. But animals that live in the wild tend to protect their own and have no caring about other species. Not all of them, but the apex predators do. They will protect the animals that the other animals in their pack or their pride, if it's a lion, and every other animal is fair game to be eaten. And that's what she's trying to say about Regina, that she's not a good person. She is the equivalent of an animal who will only protect the people that she personally feels deserve it, and everyone else is fair game to be destroyed. And she says that is a bad thing. Katie, on the other hand, comes back and says that she actually sees this as a good thing. She admires Regina. She looks up to that level of control and dominance that Regina has over the other people in her school. One of the verses is her saying, though Janice is great, she does not have this power. People literally cower. Janice can't do that. And what she's saying is that while she likes Janice and Janice is her friend, she would rather be in the plastics and be one of Regina's crew, because being with Regina gives her power. It keeps her safe from the rest of the school, and it puts her at the top of the food chain, something that she understands from living with wild animals. She knows that being the top of the food chain is the way that prevents you from being eaten. Nobody attacks the lions attack everyone else. And so she wants to be part of that crew, but it's not just in the sense that, like, that's the same idea as Heathers, right? Like, in Heathers, in the musical, the reason Veronica joins the Heathers is because she wants people at school to leave her alone. And she literally says to them, like, if you let me sit at your lunch table just once, people will think that we're friends and they'll leave me alone. You don't even have to talk to me. But with Katie, it's not just that she wants Regina's protection. She actually wants to be Regina's friend. She genuinely admires the power and the control that Regina has over the school. And this is basically the moment where Katie reveals to us, the audience, that she is making the conscious decision to become a plastic and has essentially set herself down the path of becoming a mean girl. Because that's what happens in Mean Girls, is that Katie originally thinks she's pushed into this group of friends by Janice to try and, like, orchestrate their downfall, but while she's there, she becomes the mask. She becomes one of them, and that's why Janice turns around and is like, you are a mean girl. You are one of them. You've become the thing that we were trying to destroy. You've become your worst enemy. But here we actually see Katie consciously making that decision, and we get to hear her internal thoughts on why she has made that decision, that she now wants to be a plastic, and why she's decided to become a plastic. We don't get that in the movie because they have taken Katie's section of this song and given it to Damien. So, in the movie, the song now becomes Janice and Damien singing to Katie about why she shouldn't join Regina. And that's it. That's all it is. That's the song. It's just them saying, like, if you join Regina, this is what you will become, rather than Katie saying, I want to join Regina because this is what I want to become, which is a completely different narrative and takes away all of the agency, all of the understanding. It doesn't have any weight, and it means that later on, when Regina ultimately betrays Katie by kissing Aaron Samuels, we don't feel that same power from that scene because we don't understand why Katie loves Regina so much to begin with. Katie genuinely admires and looks up to Regina. She sees her as some kind of hero at this point in time. And so when she betrays her, it really hurts Katie because it's like watching your hero fall. It's like realizing that the person that you looked up to isn't what you thought that they were. But we don't have that if we don't have her section of Apex Predator, because instead it just looks like Janice and Damien warned her not to join Regina, and then she did it anyway, and then it's like, oh well, they tried to tell you, which is not anywhere near the same. And Katie's the main character, so we should be hearing her internal thoughts. We should be seeing how she feels about situations, but they took the song off her, the song where she makes that conscious decision to become a plastic, which should be a pivotal point in the story. And they took it and they gave it to Damien. The baffling thing, right, is that, like, you see when you look at, like, Tom Hooper's Cats, it's obvious when you look at that film that the people who were making it didn't understand Cats. And, like, fair enough, Cats is quite a difficult musical to understand because it's so bizarre. But it's obvious, it feels when you watch it, that he looked at like 3 videos of Cats on YouTube and was like, I can make a musical out of that. I can make a film adaptation of that. The difference here is that all 3 versions of Mean Girls were written by Tina Fey. The original movie, the book for the stage show, and the screenplay for this movie. All written by Tina Fey. She should understand her own movie. So how have they got it so wrong? Anyway, I can't, right. Last thing to say about Apex Predators, they also massively changed the actual music of this song. It was originally quite a rocky song. It's got quite a heavy rock beat to it. It's part of why I like it so much. They've changed it to this weird, like, synthy beat where it's like an animal sound almost in the background where it's like, oh, 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 oh. It's really weird. And I'm not saying I don't like it. It still sounds good, and Owly is, like, killing it. Like, genuinely, she's so good. It's just, I preferred the original sound. And they put this through the film because, like, that sound is also in Meet the Plastics. Meet Regina. But I just don't like it as much as the original Apex Predator, so I was still kind of disappointed. Like, I still like it, but I would have rather just had Apex Predator the way it was. Okay. Next up, we have What's Wrong With Me. It is shorter. It goes from being 2 minutes and 4 seconds to 1 minute 39, but it's basically the same song. It's just shorter, so whatever. It's still really good. I can't remember the name of who plays Gretchen, but it's a good version. Then we have Stupid with Love reprise, which has been removed. I mean, I get taking out a reprise. It's usually for the best. If you're looking for something to take out of a musical adaptation, a reprise is usually a good way to go. But again, they did take 10 songs out of this film, so yeah, Stupid with Love reprise is gone. Sexy. So Sexy is a song by Karen where she's basically singing about how she wants to be sexy, but she shouldn't be judged for being sexy because she can be sexy and she can be whatever she wants. It's a fun, empowering song, but it's also really silly because, like, there's a whole bit in it where she talks about how she's going to cure sex cancer. It's like her doing her speech for, like, Miss World, where they always say, like, I want to, like, cure world hunger and create world peace. And she's like, I'm going to cure sex cancer. And they're like, sex cancer is not a thing. And then she's like, I did it. It's 30 seconds shorter because they took out the entire first bit where Karen debates over whether Halloween or world peace is, like, more important to her. But the rest of the song is pretty much the same. Although I think this version she sounds more confident than ditzy, and that might just be because they're trying to make the song sound more powerful. But I feel like it loses part of the charm of Karen being such a ditzy character, that she's kind of singing it like she's really confident and she really knows what she's talking about, whereas the idea is supposed to be more that she's really dumb and she just says things and they don't make a lot of sense a lot of the time. But on the whole, it's pretty much the same song. I just I'm sad that I think it could have done with more of the ditzy charm. Someone Gets Hurt. Someone Gets Hurt is basically the exact same song. Renee Rapp knocks it out of the park. It sounds fantastic. I don't really have anything else to say on that, and thank God I'm glad that that's the song I have the least to say about, because Someone Gets Hurt is fantastic, and if they'd fucked that up, I would have been at the door of the people who made this movie, because first of all, like, if you gotta let Renee Rapp sing, you gotta let Renee Rapp belt, and she does, so we love it. So, Revenge Party goes from being 5 minutes and 6 seconds to 4 minutes and 45 seconds, when really it should have went from being 5 minutes and 6 seconds to 0 seconds at all, because it's an awful song. I hate Revenge Party so much, and you don't understand. I woke up in the middle of the night the other day, needing to pee. So I got up, went to the bathroom, came back to bed, and then couldn't get back to sleep because all I could hear in the back of my head was, "It's a revenge party, a party that is with somebody's head on its back." And I'm like, let me sleep. I hate this fucking song. It's one of the most popular songs in the show, and I hate it so much. Anyway, it's probably as good a version as you can get. Ali sounds great. Raquel sounds great. Everyone sounds great. And I imagine it'll probably work better in a film than it would in the show, because the whole point is the song is trying to do a montage, which is really hard to do in a stage show, to show the passage of time. So I feel like it will probably work far better in the film, but I haven't seen it yet, so I can't comment. But yeah, I mean, it's Revenge Party. It sounds the same. It's a bad song in both versions, so. Then we have Fearless and Stop. We then have a run of 6 songs that have been cut. So in the Broadway version, between Revenge Party and World Burn, there should be 6 songs. Fearless, Stop, What's Wrong With Me Reprise, Whose House Is This, and More Is Better. And they've cut all 6 songs. And to be quite honest, I don't care. Like, I feel like what they have done here is, like, accidentally self-reported the fact that the Mean Girls musical is not very good. Because if you can take 6 entire songs, one after the other, out of your musical and it still makes sense, there is something genuinely wrong with your narrative. There should not be such a length of time in your musical that you can remove every single song and the story still works. Because that means that not one of those songs advance the plot in any way. And to be fair, they don't. Fearless is just people singing about how they are fearless, and I can't remember the exact context. If they're about Regina being fearless, if I remember right. It's been a while. It's not good. Stop is about Damien realizing that, like, they need to stop being horrible to each other, which should be an important song, but it's not, because it's one of the worst songs in the whole show and no one likes it. Everyone in the comments was like, in that post where they first revealed the track list, most of the comments were people going, well, at least they got rid of Stop, or, well, at least they got rid of Whose House Is This, which says a lot. Then we've got What's Wrong With Me Reprise. Again, it's a reprise, so I'm not surprised they took it out. Whose House Is This? Like I say, it's a really, really boring, really rubbish song. No one likes it. More Is Better. I can't even remember what it sounds like. So the fact that I don't remember what some of those songs sound like really does say that how much they are pointless songs. And like I say, I know I complained that the film shouldn't have removed 10 songs from the show soundtrack. And I still don't think it should have. Because if you are someone who likes the musical and you do genuinely like those songs, you would probably want them to be there. Like, I'm still seething that they took Disappear out of Dear Evan Hansen the movie, because Disappear is, like, my second favourite song on the soundtrack. To be honest, it might even be my favourite. I listen to Disappear more than no, it's not. Requiem is still my favourite. Second favourite after Requiem. I love Disappear. I listen to that song all the time, and see, when I looked at the soundtrack and they'd taken it out and replaced it with anonymous ones, and people are like, oh, it's because you don't need Disappear, and I'm like, die. Die. So if you are someone who really is attached to a song and they take it out of the adaptation of your musical, it's very, very annoying. I know, because it was me. I'm the one who lost my favourite song from Dear Evan Hansen. And so if your favorite song actually happens to be Fearless for some reason, then yeah, you're going to be pretty pissed off that it's gone. But yeah, I do think that by cutting 6 songs in a row from a musical, you are basically telling on yourself that your musical was never good. That if there are 6 full songs, one after the other, that you can take out of the show and the plot doesn't suffer from that, those songs didn't need to be there to begin with. And that is a common criticism of the Mean Girls musical, is that the second act stalls dramatically. That the first act songs are fairly decent, but the second act is filled with songs that feel like they don't advance the plot and they're just there for the sake of people singing because they have to be, because it's supposed to be a musical. And really what they should have done is just reduce the runtime of the show. Just make it shorter. The show is over 2 hours long. Just make it shorter. It doesn't have to, shows don't have to be that long. 6 is 90 minutes without an intermission. It's great. Just make the show shorter and take out the shit songs. Which is sort of what they did with the movie, but also sort of not, because it's still 2 hours long, but just without 10 songs. Bizarre. Anyway, moving on, World Burn. World Burn is actually weirdly longer in the movie than it is in the show, but it's only because of the change in the music. But actually, in fairness, I might prefer the version from the movie because it's weirdly creepy. There's this sort of ominous sound to the song that makes it feel very unsettling, which is quite fun because Regina is obviously such a scary character, and this is her plotting like her ultimate, like, this is the bit where she writes in the burn book that she's a fugly bitch and then gives it to Miss Norbury and says, like, I found this book, my friends have been writing horrible things about everyone in the school, and frames the other plastics as having written the burn book when it belonged to Regina. So this is like her ultimate moment of revenge, and I think making it sound really creepy actually works very well, and Renee sounds great. So World Burn is the one song I will give them that comes across better in the film than it does in the original. We then have I'd Rather Be Me, which is a bad song in both versions because it's basically a song where Janice tries to make this like powerful message about how it's more important to be yourself and not worry what other people think about you, which goes against everything that she's done in the entire movie, because the whole thing is that she's angry because Regina like was mean to her and does care what people, she cares because her reputation was ruined by Regina, and like, so she does care what people think about her. And she never really learns a lesson, and nor does she ever apologise for manipulating Katie, launching revenge, making Regina eat bars that made her gain weight when they knew that she had an eating disorder. Janice never gets any comeuppance, nor does she ever take any responsibility, accountability, or even acknowledge that she'd done wrong. Janice is portrayed in the musical as just being completely on the right, when it's well known by pretty much everyone who's a fan of the original film that Janice, whether we love her or not, Janice was just another brand of mean girl, which I think is sort of the idea, is that you don't have to be the girl wearing the high heels and the short skirt. You don't have to, you know, be she wears high heels, I wear sneakers, she's your captain and I'm on the bleachers, because at the end of the day, both of you are wrong. You can be high heels and short skirts and be a mean girl, and you can be sneakers on the bleachers and be a mean girl. It's not exclusive to the rich, you know. Being a mean girl there are different brands, and Janice is just as bad a person as Regina, and just that she does it while wearing black. But it's not addressed at all in the musical, and then she has this big power ballad about how I don't care what other people think, I would rather just be me, and it's like, okay, Janice, whatever you say. But it's basically the same in both versions, and Owly sounds great, so there's that. The next song on the show is Do This Thing. It's been taken out, so we go straight into the final song, which is I See Stars. It actually is longer. No, it's not. It is a minute shorter, just over a minute shorter in the movie than it is in the show, and it's fine. I don't really like I See Stars. I don't think it's a particularly good end song. As a closing number, it's rather boring, so yeah, it doesn't really do anything, and I don't really care. And then on the soundtrack we have this new song called Not My Fault by Renee Rapp and Megan Thee Stallion, which is based around that bit where it's like, it's not my fault that you're like in love with me or something. And it's just, the whole song is like, it's not my fault that you're in love with me, which is funny. I imagine it plays in the credits, and I don't think it's actually in the musical, in the movie. I imagine it's a credit song, but it's very fun. So yes, that's Mean Girls. And I just, yeah. And so after going through that, I'm like, I'm not really sure this was made for the fans of the musical either, because if it was, it would have more songs in it. They wouldn't have cut out roars. Apex Predator wouldn't have had its entire meaning changed. It wouldn't be this. So it's not for fans of the musical, it's not for fans of the original, it's not for musical theatre fans because the music isn't very good and there isn't all that much of it. So who the hell was it for? Who was this for? I think they really squandered I think they could have done something really good here. And they've cast some good people and then not used them to their full potential. And yeah, when I eventually see the movie, I'll be able to come back and tell you what like the acting non-musical parts of it are like. But at the moment I do feel a level of pessimism towards the whole thing because it feels as if it doesn't know what it is, and I feel like the changes that they have made feel as if the musical doesn't even know what it's trying to be. I think for me, changing the perspective of Apex Predator is a huge issue with the narrative. And I'm like, if you can't even understand, if you look at these songs, and I don't know, maybe they wanted to give Damien, because they've taken out Stop, I imagine they wanted to give Damien something else to sing because he's not got a lot of songs. But I'm kind of like, if you looked at the list of songs and didn't understand the point of Apex Predator and didn't understand the point of It Roars to the point where you took it out the musical, if you don't understand what those songs represent, I'm just not sure I can trust you to make a good adaptation of this show when it's kind of suggesting that you don't entirely understand the material. And the material isn't even that good. You know what I mean? Like, the material isn't even that strong, and you've still managed to make it worse. I did see one take online, which was that the reason that they've changed the music so much as they have and made it sound more poppy and stuff is because the biggest criticism of the Mean Girls musical is that the music itself isn't good. And I can understand that take. However, I don't think it's improved enough in the soundtrack to actually have changed, to have improved that in any way. I think Apex Predator is worse. I think it was the best song in the show and they've made it worse. I think Worldburn does sound better, but other than that, I don't think any of the songs sound drastically different enough to actually improve on the material. And a lot of the issue with the show is that the lyrics are terrible. The lyrics are so cringe. And the lyrics are, for the most part, unchanged. So I don't really feel like they have improved the music enough for that to be a justification for what they've done. I think it's just, at the end of the day, maybe Mean Girls just isn't a strong enough musical to even deserve an adaptation. But I think if you are a fan of the Mean Girls musical, and I know there are people out there that are, I feel genuinely sorry for you because I don't think that this was the adaptation that you would have wanted. And maybe we would have been better just giving everyone a pro shot. Like, we can't make one now because the show's been closed since 2020. But maybe if we could have staged some kind of one night only performance and filmed it and given everyone that, because then at least then you're getting the version that you know and love, rather than this very watered down, distilled and hacked to bits adaptation that isn't really what you wanted or what you knew or what you cared about. And so, I mean, if you are a Mean Girls fan, a Mean Girls musical fan, and you watched this movie and you loved it, I would love to hear from you. But I just feel like this maybe wasn't the adaptation that people would have wanted, at which case, why does it exist at all? Yeah, so I think that's all I really have to say about the Mean Girls musical. Like I say, if I do go and see it, or I see it when it comes out on streaming or whatever, I will maybe do a video talking about the rest of it. But this is how I feel currently, having listened to the soundtrack, and I'm gonna go now because it's lunchtime. So thank you for being with me. Like I said, this wasn't scripted or anything, this was just me chatting about my thoughts. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Unless you're going to be really, really mean to me about my opinions, then please don't, because I don't need to hear it. But other than that, yeah, I'll see you in whatever I post next. Bye everyone.